so our next speaker is Enias Chingwe. Enias has been with us for 6 years, and the thing I love most about Enias is his warm smile that he always has on his face. It always makes us feel welcome here. I also asked Enias to describe what love means to him. He already gave it away, but I'll repeat it. Love is not love that alters when its alteration finds. It's a fixed mark that no remover can remove. Enias is delivering from Presentation Mastery Level 4, Project 1, Managing Difficult Audience. Enias' speech is entitled Breaking Bad Habits, and his evaluator is Didier. Please can you give us the objectives?
Okay, this is a very difficult task. Okay, his objective is to, like you just said, the speech is about managing a difficult audience, and he will talk about how to break bad habits. So that will be the speech will be around breaking bad habits. So the question is it 10 or 15 minutes? Because I'm not quite sure. Is it 7 minutes or 10?
15 to 15.
10 to 15 minutes, okay. Okay.
Thank you. So just to clarify, this is a role-play assignment designed to help the speaker practice managing difficult audience members. So with the speech entitled Breaking Bad Habits, let's welcome Enias.
Sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap a destiny. You are what you repeatedly do, so says Aristotle. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Is there anyone here who has tried to break a habit? Just by show of hand. Were you successful? Some are successful, some don't become successful. Because breaking a habit is very difficult. Yet habits are part of our lives. Habits are like a cable. You sow a weave and it becomes a trend. You continue doing that, it then becomes a cable. That makes it very difficult to break it. The good thing is habits can be learned and can be unlearned. It's basically up to you to take the initiative and break that habit. I still remember 6 years ago, I used to drink like a fish. Every Friday, the only thing that I think of is going to shops. The grapes, 24 pack, and go home and start drinking. But then there came a time when I said, this habit I have to break it. When I did that, I then started making that step towards breaking the habit. Yes, it was difficult, but then I made a choice. There are a lot of things that I had to live in my life that I was enjoying so that I could become a better person. So what are those things that you have to follow for you to be able to break that stubborn habit that you've created? Maybe since you were born up to now, you've got that habit. There are basically 4 things that you have to look at when you are breaking a habit. The first one, which is very critical, ask yourself why. Start with your why. It was the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche who said, he who has a big why can overcome anything.
What is a why? I mean, if you think about it, sure, why? Why do we do anything?
Why? Thank you so much for asking that question. Why is the motivation? Is what drives you to be able to look at that habit and break it. If you don't have that zeal, you don't have that drive, you'll not be able to break it. A lot of people have looked at how. So they go through the how. But then they realize that their why is not that big enough. And then they backslide into the same habit. So that's why it's very critical to start with your why. Tony Robbins said, the how part of it is just 20% of you to be able to break the habit. 80% is on the why.
But the why is a challenge to find out. Who knows why they do things, especially random arbitrary things like smoking and things like that.
Thank you so much for asking that question. When we're talking of the why, you have to look into yourself and say, why do you want to stop this habit? It could be, say, for drinking. It would be that maybe every Monday you're late for work. It could be that the habit that you've got is taking away the confidence from you. Maybe you cannot deliver the speeches. So you join Toastmasters to be able to be a proficient speaker. So if your why is big enough, then you can be able to start working on changing those stubborn habits. So that's why it's very critical to have an introspection of the reason why you do something, why you want to change. I spoke to you about joining Toastmasters. If you join Toastmasters and your why is not big enough, say you join Toastmasters because you just want to be able to speak. When you've delivered 5 speeches, what do? You leave. Because your why is not big enough. But then when you create that big enough why, then you'll be able to stick around, like myself, like Charlene, like Judith. We've been in Toastmasters for more than 5 years because our why continues going bigger as we hit those milestones. Secondly, you need to create what is called a leverage. Going back again to Tony Robbins, he said that there are 2 reasons why we do what we do. We are trying to move away from pain to pleasure. Everything that we do is because we want to enjoy. Every Friday I would say, I want to go and enjoy myself drinking. Because I derived pleasure from drinking. Because of that, I've created the neural pathway within myself that made me crave for beer every now and then.
She just wants some wine.
Well, do you want to call me something?
No, I just want some more wine.
You can have wine after I've completed this speech. So as I was saying, these 2 things are the ones that drives us. The pain and pleasure. And for you to begin moving and changing yourself, you have to do what is called de-association. You have got craving for beer or craving for chocolates. Now starting to decide to look at what you crave for and have a pain associated with that thing. For a beer, for example, you'd say beer is bitter. When I wake up after drinking beer, I can't walk. I feel depressed. Why should I drink beer? So you're starting to dissociate, getting away from the pleasure and associating with the pain. Once you do that, you've created it.
But how do you break a habit that causes pleasure, a bad habit that causes pleasure? But where do you find motivation and the what and the how?
Thank you so much for that question. As I said before, the reason why we've got habits that we've kept is because of pleasure. They give enjoyment to us. There's no habit that you can carry on doing unless if it gives you pleasure. Anything that gives you pain, it's like if I step on your foot for too long, you say, remove your foot. Why? Because there's pain. You cannot stay in a painful environment for long because you want pleasure. So the habit that you've got, it's a bad habit, but then it is giving you pleasure. Even when you talk of gossiping, it gives you pleasure. That you're talking about somebody. You know, those people that can gossip, they want to run around and see and get somebody to say this new thing that's happening. You know, because it gives them that pleasure. If it was giving them pain, they will not keep it. So that's the reason. We go to the third thing, is replacement. Once you have identified what you want to change, it's now to look at another habit that supports, that empowers you. If you don't have a habit that you're going to condition yourself on, definitely you'll see it back, you'll actually backslide to where you were before. It has been said, and the research was done, that most of the people who don't have an empowering habit, who don't create a substitute for a habit, within a period of a year, they go back to the former self. Because they have not created an empowering substitute habit. And that habit has to create the same excitement that you had with the old habit. With me, for example, as I said, I used to drink. Then I realized that I had to stop. I adopted another habit, which is joining Toastmasters, which is doing marathons. So instead of drinking beer on a Saturday, I'll do my 42 kilometers. Instead of drinking beer on Thursday, I'll be joining Toastmasters, improving myself. So what that does to me is I'm no longer leaving a space for me to drink. Because that's the other thing. If you've got if you've got too much time with yourself, you tend to abuse it. But the moment you close all those gaps, you won't be able to have the time for you to pursue or to do those things that you don't like. Then lastly, you have to look at reinforcement. This is where the habit that you have created sticks. You condition that habit through repetition. You continue repeating the same thing over and over again. Some say it takes you 21 days to create a new habit. I always say it takes your lifetime to be able to have a habit that sticks. It's not 21 days. Because if you go to the gym for 21 days and you stop, what happens? So it has to be a continuous process. As long as that habit is supporting yourself and it's empowering you, make sure you do it every day. More successful people, when they wake up early in the morning, they've got to that what they call a morning routine. They do it every day. Say the same words every day. Do exercises every day. And that habit is stuck with you. Once you have created that reinforcement, make sure you reward yourself. Our mind or our makeup always understands things of reward. So you do one thing for 10 days, reward yourself. But if you were drinking, don't reward yourself with beer. Make sure you reward yourself with something else that is empowering.
Chocolate.
Once that creates a neural pathway and forces the habit to stick as you continuously do those things. If you go through these 4 processes and religiously follow them to the latter, I can tell you today that you'll be able to conquer that habit that you've got. That habit that has become a cable, that is habit that has become a permanent mark, you'll be able to overcome it. But it takes you, it takes your assessment, your introspection to look at what are those things that cause pain and pleasure. Because as I said, those are the 2 critical things, pain and pleasure. And you relink and create a neural pathway. Over to you, Madam Toastmaster.
While I'm still here, I would like to introduce our second evaluator, which is DA, who evaluated our DTM, our Distinguished Toastmasters, Enias' speech.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters. I'm not going to repeat what she said. I mean, we evaluate the speech, not the person. It was quite a difficult task to evaluate DTM. Well, the first thing that I might say, your speech was quite interesting for all of us, in the sense that 90% of what we do every day is habit. That's the reality. We are creator of habit. So I really enjoyed your speech today. I think if I look at the, you know exactly how to captivate the audience. You know exactly what to say, and you are well prepared. You integrate your own experience with the topic, which was good, and you actually did a bit of research, because you were talking about Tony Robbins, and I think most of us know. I don't know if some of you have listened to Tony Robbins, but he's the guru when it comes to personal development. So he's one of them. So well done for that. Example, you gave your own example that you stopped drinking, which was good, because everybody always relates to a topic based on someone's experience. And I always believe when you talk about something just because you read it, people don't really feel the connection. But if you can talk about your own example, then it makes it more meaningful for people, and people feel like they can do it as well, because if you've been able to do it. So that was a good example how to break bad habit by stopping drinking alcohol. I must say I need to ask you a bit of drinking alcohol. Something that you need to work on, I would say, when you were standing here, sorry. I think at some extent, you were focusing on the people here. But just to be mindful of the audience, everybody. So you should look at everyone, in terms of your eye contact. Variety of, the vocal variety. In the beginning, you started very well. But to some extent, I think you've gone a bit flat. Like you were just talking the story. So maybe just try to emphasize more in terms of the tone of certain word. Gesture, I think sometimes you were talking about something, but you were not using the right gesture. So that's something that you can improve on. But the challenge for me is that you should do this type of speech more often, because it's quite a long speech, 10 to 15 minutes. It's quite a long speech, so that will, and especially for this topic where you're managing disruption, a difficult audience, so people can step in and ask things, because those things happen every day when you present in front of an audience. But well done for the speech.